So as you see on the blue screen, that is the historical context of English language, the historical concept of global English, we should say clearly. We will be discussing about that. Now, what is the history regarding the English language? And we will try to focus on this one today. So the question comes first: what is the history? What is the why uh, English language has become the global language? Within the three classes, we have understood it properly that English language has become the global language, and we try to pinpoint the causes of becoming English a global language to some extent. Today, we will be trying to why English language has become the global language. Why not the other language has become the global language? To answer this question, naturally, there is two answers. That is one, that is the geo-historical answers. That is the English language is the supreme in its position as a language. And we have learned that there are several languages in this world. Many of them are dead language. Among the alive language, English has got the preeminence. That means this is the best language for communication for several reasons. We will be discussing the reasons why it has become the best language later on. However, there are several reasons, other reasons, that is the socio-cultural reasons, that is the English language has which consists of many varieties, is distinctive in its use of sound, grammar, and the vocabulary. So that is the socio-cultural answers. This idea will be clear later on. Let us discuss to the geographical and historical reasons. Actually, the history suggests that English uh, reaches English language reached the world, beginning with the pioneering voices of Americas, Asia, and antipodes. As we know that towards the uh, 14th and 17th century, 14th or uh, towards the beginning of 14th century, many voyagers, the adventurers of European countries, basically Dutch, German, French, Romans, English, they spread it all over the world. And this is the English nation. They spread America, Asia, and the other islands uh, as the voyagers. This is one reason. And it was an expansion which continued with the 19th century colonial development. At first, the English and the European countries, they started their voyages towards the other parts of this world. That means the unexplored region of this world, like America, Asia, and the other African, Caribbean countries. And their motive was to do business with these countries, first of all, towards the beginning of the 14th century. But next time, they developed their colony in these areas. A colony, as we know, that they established their ruling uh, power in this area. And that was uh, within the 19th century, that is the colony, spread it to Africa, South Pacific, and including America, though America got independent towards the later half of 18th century. But this is the scenario that towards the end of the 19th century, is British colonies, that British imperial power is spreaded the most part of the world, and they established their colony in several regions. And we know With them, their language, English language, is spread all over the world. Let me remind you that we are discussing about the historical context of global language. And this kind of colonial development took a significant further steps, and it was adopted in the mid 20th century as an official and the semi-official language by many newly independent states. We know that we were, that means the Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, this Indian subcontinent was also a part of the British Empire. They established colony in this area and they ruled the country for several regions, several centuries. Okay, and once upon a time, we got independent, and not only Bangladesh. Towards the first half of 20th century, most of the country got independent from the British colonial power. So when a country got independent from the British colonial power, there is no reason of sustaining their language, English language. But the scenario that we notice that after getting independence from the British colonial power, many countries established English language as the semi-official or official language. Let's discuss the scenario of India. India is a multilinguistic country. In this part, we see naturally 30 languages are there in India. So English has become a second language and also a second official language in India. In case of Bangladesh, that has become the not second language. That has become the. But once upon a time, up to 1987, in Bangladesh also English language got as an official language. And though the history of Bangladesh independence suggested to the development of linguistics movement, next time, in order to put pressure on the importance of the cultural diversity and the linguistics identity, after 1987, Bengali got the official language and the state language. And in other parts, that means in Pakistan, English is their semi-official language or the second language. So the scenario is that when uh, many countries got independence from the British colonial power, there are several reasons of sustaining English as state language or semi-official language. This is another reason of spreading English language all over the globe. That is the decision. That is the uh, definition of global language. And English now, towards the end of the 20th century, towards the second half of the 20th century, and at present, English is spread in the most of the major oceans, that is the Atlantic Oceans, that is St. Helena, Indian Ocean, Sicilies, and the Pacific in many islands such as Fiji and Hawaii. That means the most remote parts of the world got touch with English language. Someone's speaker is not muted. Please make your speaker mute. I am getting rustling sounds. Unintentionally, most probably he has done so. Okay, now it's okay. Fine. So this is the scenario that English language is spread in the most part of the world, most part of the world. And it is this spread of representation which makes the application of the level global language a reality. So the way, the first of all, the English people spread it all the parts of this world. Then they occupied the political power, and next time English next time the countries got independent from the British rule. However, they sustained English language as either official or the semi-official language of these countries. Another reason that we have mentioned it earlier, that is the socio-cultural explanation, looks at the way people all over the world in many walks of life have come to depend on English. So we have got the dependency on English language for economic and the social well-being. So if we know English language, the scenario was created all over the world that if you know English language, naturally you will get a good job in the world community, because most of the European countries and the most of the international organization, they use English as their common language of communication. And for this reason, this is the common thing that if you know English language, you will get a good job. And that means your economic solvency, the economic dependency depends on your learning or your knowledge of one language, that is the English language. And they might be, and the speakers of English language will be well in their economic and the social life if he or she knows English very well. This is the socio-cultural reason. And the language has penetrated deeply into the international domains of political lives, business, safety, communication, entertainment, the media, and education. So the basic sectors of human phenomena: politics, business, safety, entertainment, media, education, and communication has been occupied and represented for one language, that is the English language. That became the reality. And if we want to do business, if you want to do international business, if you want to learn higher education, if you want to do some entertainment, if you want to do some safety work, this field were purely occupied by one language, a linguistics monopoly, that is the English language. This idea will be clear when we will be discussing uh, the causes of communications, the entertainments, the other things, okay, deeply. So these are the reasons that is the English language has become the global language. And the convenience of having a lingua franca available to serve global human relations and needs has come to be appreciated by millions. Several domains, as we shall see, have come to be totally dependent on it, and the computer software industry being a prime example. So that we mentioned a little bit earlier. That is, if we see at present, it it is a tendency that Google is trying to translate in other language, Bengali, but before that, we had a scenario that if you want to learn computer literacy, then you have to know English language, because the computer technology has been invented by the America, USA, another English-speaking country. So the IBM and the other computer manufacturing company, the technological knowledge and other software knowledge that are basically based on English language. So you have no alternative to learn computer literacy without the knowledge of English language. And the language future seems assured when so many organizations come to have a vested interest in it. So the human phenomena in several sectors are interested on English language. So this is the scenario that English language has become the global language. So let's move on to the origin of global language. So we have learned already that English is the first language of only five countries of the world, that is UK, USA, New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. But who are the sole forefathers of English language? কাদের কাছ থেকে ইংরেজি ভাষাটা প্রথম আসলো? এই গ্লোবাল ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ ইংলিশ ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ যেটা আমরা এখন ব্যবহার করছি, এর অরিজিনটা কোথায়? লেটস হ্যাভ আ ডিসকাশন অন দিস পয়েন্ট। সো উই হ্যাভ টু গো ব্যাক to the history of the global language. That is, uh, always we have learned that language always moves from speaker's mouth to mouth. So when a people visits a country, he or she carries his linguistic identity with him. It is one point. And also we have learned that uh, for the colonial coach, for the voyagers' adventures, English language is spread all over the world. That means English language was on a move. And as soon as English language in England from the northern Europe in the 5th century, it began to spread around the British Isles. British Isles, actually, you know that the Britain or the UK is a collection of several islands, and the UK is a, a collection of 4 states or 4 countries. We know that, that is England, uh, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. These 4 parts combine UK, United Kingdom. Simultaneously, USA, there will be 54 states there. So in Britain, as we have given an example earlier, in case of Bangladesh, we use Bangla language. However, the Bangla language is the standard Bangla language is taken from the northern southern part, greater southern part of this country. In the same way, in 15th century, the all parts of UK had been using different kind of regional English language, but the standard English that was picked from the Northern Europe. And that English became the standard English. What is the standard English? What you listen from BBC. BBC English is the standard English. Even if we visit Scotland, if you visit Ireland, you see a different kind of tone and pronunciation of the same English language. It means that in 15th century, the Northern English language, Northern European English language was picked as the standard of English language. So uh, when the Northern English got prominence in communication of UK islands, that means the British Islands, the other parts, the Wales, Cornwall, Cambria, southern Scotland, traditionally the stronghold of the Celtic language. Actually, the language used by Wales, Cornwall, Scotland, this area was occupied by another linguistics origin. That language is called Celtic language. So let's have a look to the Celtic history. So these people actually they're called the Celts, as you see on maps. That these are the Celt people. So the English language is not originated from the all parts of the UK or the Europe. So it is a Roman language. So you see that the Celts are a collection of Indo-European peoples of the parts of Europe and Anatolia, and identified by the use of the Celtic languages and the other cultural similarity. The Celt people are similar in their cultures, and our language is called Celtic language. So Celtic language is the origin of English language. That that you can see. Also, you can see another map. Commonly, the term Celt is used to describe the person of the Irish, Scotland, Cornish, and the Welsh descendant. So, before, as you know, that uh, in the 5th century or in the 4th century, that means nearly 2000 years back or nearly 1700 years back, you see the scenario was different. Naturally, at that time, most of the people were the voyagers. They had been going from one parts of Europe to the other parts of the Europe. So in the part that means the Irish, Scotland, Wales, Cambria, this area was already originated by some Aboriginal people, and that Aboriginal, যেটাকে আমরা বলছি কিনা আদিবাসী, এই স্কটল্যান্ড, আয়ারল্যান্ড, ওয়েলস এসব জায়গায় আদিবাসী যে মানুষগুলো বাস করত তাদের বলা হতো কেল্ট পিপল, এবং তাদের ভাষাটাকে বলা হতো কেল্টিক ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ। এই কেল্টিক ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ যে ইংলিশ ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ, নো, দ্যাট কেল্টিক ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ ওয়াজ ডিফারেন্ট। So at that time, so the Celts were a collection of the tribes with origins of Central Europe and that shared a similar language, religious belief, tradition, and culture. So this area was occupied by Celtic people. What happened next? As you see on map, the Brighton is a constituent part of the city of Brighton and Hove. As you see in map, that is, this is a Brighton and Hove. This is a Southampton. This is a Bath. This is Cardiff. This is Birmingham. This is Cambridge. This is the London. Yeah. So this area was occupied by some people, and the naturally all parts here France you see here. So the people of all over the Europe was moving from one parts to other parts of Europe for their better living, for their better livelihood. And at that time the livelihood was also the peasantry. They had been doing the agriculture work, the farm work. As you see, still you see that if you visit Birmingham, you see so many areas are occupied by the farm. And even in London, you see several parts. You see the peasantry, several uh, works, several green works you will see. So the Brighton, this area was situated, the town's importance grew in the Middle Ages and the old town developed. And from the first century AD, the Romans built a number of villages in Brighton, and the Romano-British Brythonic Celts formed farming settlement in this area. So this area, the orange color area, in this area they settled, the European people, the Britons, they first settled there and started to live for their better life, because this is the sea area, and next time they spread in the other parts of this world, other parts of this region, that is UK and the other parts. And the English largely descended from the two main historical population group, the Germanic tribes who settled the southern Britain following the withdrawal of the Romans. And most probably many of you have completed honors in English language. And though you haven't completed, so the students or who are the participants who are joining in this class, uh, you know, who have completed honors in English language or literature, you know the names of Angles, Saxon, and Jutes in the early history, and the Frisian in the 5th century. They occupied these Angles, Saxon, Jutes. Actually, they came from the Rome, the Roman origin, and they came in this Celtic area as we have suggested earlier, and they occupied this area. And the particularly the Romanist Britain who had been living there already. So some people had been living in this area, but in the 5th century, that is called Anglo-Saxon period. In this period, Angles they came from Rome, and including Saxon and Jutes, and they had a different language, that is the Roman language. So they came up with their language and they occupied the power of this region. That is called Anglo-Saxon period of English history. So the end of the Roman, so they came here, they dominated this area, and they had a different language, not the Celtic language. Remember that. The end of the Roman rule in Britain was the transition of the Roman Britain to the post-Roman Britain, and in 1883, the usurper Magnus Maximus withdrew troops from the northern and the western Britain, and probably leaving local warlords in charge. So in 1838, so 383, this man, uh, Magnus Maximus, left the country, giving charge to the Roman Empire. So Magnus Maximus was a Roman emperor. As you saw, that Angles, Saxon, and Jutes, they came from Rome, and this is one of the emperor who dominated the area, and he left this area in 383. He usurped the throne from the Emperor Gratian in 383, and through negotiation with the Emperor Theodosius the First. So the Roman Emperor dominated this area for several years. The Britons, the Old English Britons, Welsh, Brightonite, pronounced Brightonized Britons, uh, also known as the Celtic Briton, ancient Britons were indigenous Celtic people who inhabited Great Britain, at least in the Britain Iron Age into the Middle Ages. So these people, as we have told, that the Celtic people are the Britons or the Britons, the Old English people are the indigenous people in this area. They had been living in this area, and that is uh, the scenario. Another people came with this area, and we know that they are the Vikings. The Vikings people are the Norse. They and the people came from the Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. And in this area, there are excessive cold. But these Vikings are moving from place to place for a better shelter, and they also came England, and also they occupied several uh, area of England for several years. They also came in this area. So we see that in England there were the Celtic indigenous people, and apart from that, we see that Anglo-Saxon and Jutes, they came from Rome with their French language. So they had been ruling this country, and also the Viking also came. So many people came in this area to dominate the power, and we see that the uh, Roman tribal group, that Anglo-Saxon Jews and the Vikings, they dominated the power in this area up to the Norman conquest. That is happened in 801066. So this is another history, turns to the history of global language. Many nobles from England fled to north of Scotland, and where there were made welcome, and eventually the language is spread throughout the Scottish Islands. So in the history, that is in 1066, 1066, that is that a battle of Hastings was fought on 14th October 1066 between the Norman French army of William and the Duke of Normandy and an English army under the Anglo-Saxon King Harold. So আমরা যেই অ্যাঙ্গেল সেকশন এবং জুটসদের কথা বললাম, তারা এই 1066 সাল পর্যন্ত এখানে তাদের শাসন ক্ষমতা বজায় রাখে, এবং এই সময় 1066 there was a king, that is the Anglo-Saxon king, and his name was King Harold Godwin. But the Normandy, the Duke of Normandy, they came here to occupy the power of this area, and in that battle, the King Harold was defeated by Duke of Normandy. That is, and England got under the rule of uh, Duke of Normandy, okay, and the Norman conquest, and their language was French. So they came from the Norman, and so uh, for the War of Hastings, Duke of Normandy became the powerful king of England, and they established French language. Okay, so the England and the last king of Anglo-Saxon, Godwin, was defeated by Duke of Normandy. Uh, but compared with later events, there were movements on a very local scale within the British Isles. The first significant step in the process of English towards its status as the global language didn't take place in another 300 years. towards the end of the 16th century. So when the England, King of England, Anglo-Saxon King Godwin was defeated by the Duke of Normandy, then the French language became the dominant language of UK or the other parts. And at that time, the people who had been English language, using English language in this area, they they moved from UK and they England, and they went to Scotland, Ireland, and the other parts. But the scenario is that from up to the 16th century, English language didn't.
Sir muted.
Sorry, 1 minute. I'm coming back. Sorry, sorry for the intervention. Actually, after the conquest of Norman conquest, they dominated the power of this area, and after that, nearly 300 years, uh, the English language was not the dominant language of this area. And after 3 years, towards the beginning of the 14th century, or the English language or the voyagers spread it to the other parts of this world, and English language spread it the other exterior region of this area to have the global language status. And at the same time, the number of the mother tongue English speakers in the world is thought to have been between 5 to 7 million, and almost all of them living in the British Isles. Up to these, that means 16th century পর্যন্ত অথবা 15th century যদি আমরা পর্যন্ত বলি, তাহলে ইংরেজি যাদের মাতৃভাষা ছিল, এরা শুধুমাত্র এই ব্রিটিশ আইল্যান্ডেই অবস্থান করতো এবং তাদের সংখ্যা ছিল 5 থেকে 7 মিলিয়ন, তার মানে 1 কোটিও না। ওকে, সো লেটস look at the scenario that happened next. Between the end of the reign of Elizabeth, that is 1603, and the beginning of the reign of Elizabeth II, 1952, this figure increased almost 50-fold, প্রায় 50 গুণ বেড়ে যায়। ওকে, 1603 সাল থেকে শুরু করে 1952 সাল, যদি আমরা এই 350 বছর দেখি, প্রায় 50 গুণ, যেখানে আমরা শুনলাম যে 1600 সালে 16 শতাব্দীর শেষের দিকে সেখানে 5 থেকে 7 মিলিয়ন মাতৃভাষা যাদের ইংরেজি ছিল, এদের সংখ্যা ছিল 5 থেকে 7 মিলিয়ন, but it became the 50-fold towards 1952, and this figure increased almost 50-fold to some 250 million, of the vast majority living outside the British Isles. So the scenario, আমরা এই 350 বছরে যে সিনারিও দেখলাম, যে এর আগে 350 বছর আগে, towards the end of the 16th century, the people living in the British Isles and their first language was only the English language, and the number was 5 to 7 million, not 1 crore also. But in 350 years, nearly 50-fold English-speaking people emerged, but not in the Britain, not in the UK, but all the other parts of this world. The number and the figure became 250 million. And most of the people were and continue to be Americas. As we have uh, seen that British also occupied America as their colony, and it is a vast area, the vast territory, and এই যে 250 ইংলিশ ভাষাভাষী মানুষের আহ, আহ, কথা আমরা জানলাম যাদের মাতৃভাষা ইংরেজি, তারা সবাই ব্রিটেনের বাইরে কথা বলে, তার অধিকাংশই বাস করে হচ্ছে আমেরিকা। And in the 16th century, the North America, that we first find a fresh dimension being added to the history of the language. So this is America. And in this way, English language is spreaded the other parts of this world, and English language became the global language. Okay, let's uh, sorry. So this is the way the English language is spreaded all over the world, and we learned the Celtic people are the indigenous people living in the Central Europe. Next time, in case of the UK, the England or the UK's power was occupied by some Roman groups of tribal groups. They are called Anglo-Saxon and Jutes. They occupied the power of UK or England up to 1066, and 1066 Duke of Normandy occupied the power of England, and from that time onwards French became the dominant language of UK or the Europe. And in the next 200 or 300 years, English language was not spreaded. That means towards the end of 16th century, we see that only 5 to 7 million English speaking native English speakers had been using in the Britain or the UK or the British Isles. But in 300 years, the number became 50-fold. That became 250 million English speaking people immersed all over the world. And many, the majority part had been living in America. As we know that America was a colony of Britain. In this way, English language became the global language, and that is the historical and the cultural context that English language is spreaded all over the world and got the scenario of global language. Okay, so